transition there, so you can let me know when it's time. Right. Good afternoon and welcome to UnitedTV. Today is March 28, 2025. My name is Kemal Erkan. Today we have a special episode with one of our familiar faces, Mayor John Carney. Although he's been here for so many different titles before, this is his fourth appearance on the show, but it's his first as a mayor after the transition was completed. So we are going to discuss the city of Wilmington issues with Mayor Carney. If it's okay, I'm going to call him John because we also know him at the personal level. So how are you doing?
Doing really well, and it's great to be back on your show, Kemal. It's been a little while. I am in a new position now for the last 3 months. So far, it's been going well. I really am enjoying it.
So you were actually kind of getting ready for retirement, and then I was telling you to go for the Senate. And then something happened and you wanted to do this, and I'm glad you are doing it because I think we need the leadership and experience in this city of Wilmington. So how's that transition going for you?
Yeah, it's going well. First of all, I'm glad I am where I am and not in Washington, D.C. with all the craziness going on there. And I think the bottom line is here as mayor of the city, I feel like I can have a really direct impact on the things that affect people's ordinary everyday lives. And so the quality of our streets, the quality of our parks, the taxes people pay, the response that they get from city government for issues, their water and sewer systems, all these things affect people in a very direct way. We have significant issues with public safety, which obviously is the top thing on people's list, no matter what neighborhood you live in. Got great parks across our city, and we've got investments that we need to make in our infrastructure, and I'm really having fun doing it, to be honest with you, Kemal.
Well, I think that's because of the experience that you have. So there's that, what you have established all this time. So now this is where you can apply everything that you know into this, and it's relatively more controlled region. So, and you are a Delawarean, so you actually are one of the, if you have to kind of name a couple people who would represent Delaware or what they remember, maybe after Joe Biden, you are one of those people.
I'm not in Joe Biden's category. Let's be clear about that.
For Delaware, you are. So nationwide, fine, Joe Biden was the president, but for Delaware, you are one of the people who serve for the state the most, and we appreciate that. So you started in 2001. That's 2 years after I moved to the United States.
It was just around the time you were moving here, as I recall. Yeah, and I was running for lieutenant governor.
Almost for entire time I was here, you were in a public office, and it's not easy to stay in those positions and protect your name, your reputation, and I personally believe that you did a great job. So, and I thank you for that because not every politician is able to do that. And I think you set a great example for those people. Now we have a lot of new challenges in the city of Wilmington, and we want to talk about the economy. And I know you just finished the budget discussions, and one of the issues that's probably discussed the most is property taxes. What should we know about property taxes? What type of increases we are expecting? So we want to kind of discuss those, if you can elaborate those, please.
Yeah, so property taxes are based on the assessed value of the property that you own, multiplied by the tax rate, and it gives you whatever your payment is in that given year. Well, the assessed values in most places are done every few years. In our case, they haven't been done in 40 years. And so this is an experience like we've not had in recent history, really, when you think about it. And so Newcastle County does the assessments for the city. And so all across the city of Wilmington, people's properties have been revalued. And the goal, the legal standard, is that those values reflect the market value of your property. So how much would your house go for? How much would it be sold for in your neighborhood today? And their assessed value should approximate that pretty closely. And so we're finding that that's not the case in many cases. And so if it isn't, if the what they call the tentative assessment was higher than you would expect it to be in your neighborhood, then you should appeal. And several thousand did appeal, including myself. The people from Tyler, who were that was the contractor that did work from Newcastle County, did a very good job there. The person I met with was very knowledgeable. He asked really good questions. He wanted to know about the quality, the condition of my house, different problems that we had, like my basement walls are crumbling a little bit. Some of the dormers needed to be fixed. And so he made some adjustments. I told him what houses in the neighborhood would go for. He asked me what I would ask for if I were to sell it. Then I told him generally that I would ask for one number and really expect to get a lower number for that. And they adjusted my assessed value down, still a little high, but closer to what its actually market value is. So we're encouraging people across the city, because everybody's house is a little bit different. And those consultants, they're looking at how many bedrooms, what's the kitchen like, how many bathrooms, and they make some generalizations about the values in that neighborhood, and then they assess. So people in our city should look at that assessed value that's now in the control of Newcastle County. And if it looks high, most of them will, then they need to appeal. And the time for appeals has been extended until the end of the month. They can appeal again in the next year.
End of the month, March?
Yes, in the end of this month. And so we're trying to work with the county to maybe see if we could get some systemic changes. So across neighborhoods, across areas of the city where we see, based on the sales data that we have, that things are a little bit off. So it's complicated, but at the end of the day, wherever that value settles out, the county will set it, we'll apply a tax rate to it, and that'll be your school tax and in our case, that'll be your City of Wilmington tax. The school districts will set their own rate.
Now, you said you appealed yours, and you don't have to give me the dollar amount, but from the percentage point, how much increase?
No, I'm happy to give the dollar amount. So it came in first at about $480,000, which is way high for my neighborhood. There are some bigger houses in the Triangle, which is where I live, 19th Street. But my neighbor, so I'm a duplex. I have a mirror image house right next to mine, just sold 2 years ago. A little less than 2 years ago, and it sold for $265,000. So that should be close to where mine is. They adjusted mine based on information that I provided. I took photographs of some of the issues with the house, and they adjusted it down to something like $353,000. Still a little bit high, particularly compared to my attached neighbor at $265,000. But whether to appeal again probably isn't worth all the time. What it'll mean, though, is increase in my tax city tax from about almost $1,100 to about $1,300. So that's not a pretty sizable increase. I can afford it, but there are also citizens across Wilmington who won't be able to. It'll be a stretch for them, and that's why I'm encouraging people to challenge and look for ways that we, as the city, can try to get some better assessments than what we currently have.
So I guess people have to really listen carefully what you are saying here, because with the deadline and all that, unless they take an action, they may just stick with what's already
That's
assessed.
Exactly right. If they don't take an action, then the current assessed value that the county has approved will be applied, or the new tax rate, which is down significantly, will be applied to that. Now, if it's a lower value, people are paying less than $1,000 a year, and so a 30% increase on less than $1,000 will be less than $300, but that's still for a lot of people. So we're also looking at ways that we can provide some property tax assistance for very low-income households and families, particularly senior citizens who might be on a fixed Social Security income and really don't have the ability to move up. And plus, in the backdrop, we have electricity rates that have been going up, other inflationary cost.
So that was going to be kind of my next question. Are we expecting other increases on water, sewer, and the
Yeah, so there's a small increase in water sewer, about $4 a month. I know, again, for folks that are on fixed income, any increase is something, but we have big issues, infrastructure issues with our water and sewer. You've heard of PFAS, and there are new regulations coming out from EPA and the federal government to reduce the amount of PFAS in the water to a very minuscule level, and that costs a lot of money. So the question for me was, in light of the fact that some people are going to have a property tax increase, even though we're not asking for more revenue because of the assessment, that it wasn't a good time to, raise water and sewer rates. On the other hand, if we didn't do it, then next year or the year after, it would have to be a much bigger increase. And so we opted for just a smaller. We cut the increase recommended by the technical committee of 9% to just 6%, which is about $4 a month.
And water, actually, somehow it's almost more expensive than electricity in the city of Wilmington, I guess. So I had my personal issue, with the toilet tanks. Sometimes if there's any issues, they keep running.
They keep running, and people should pay attention to that because otherwise your bill will go up quite a bit.
So I'm not going to ask you to help me with the bill, but I already took care of it. But I just realized it was coming from that.
Yeah,
it was a lot.
It's both. People should really pay attention to their water usage as those bills come in regularly, by the way, as well as their electricity consumption, because in both cases you can do things to reduce that monthly amount. And a lot of people just don't pay attention to it, particularly in the wintertime. Like I keep my thermostat at 65 and, still.
65 is low.
What's that?
65? That's low.
Well,
I mean, it's perfect
you get
for me.
used
I mean,
to it.
I do like the kind of
I
cool.
like it a little bit chillier. It is. But, if you put it up at 70, and anything over that, it's going to cost you a lot of money when it gets really cold, and we've had a cold winter.
Right. This year was, especially this year was very cold. So now the budget increase is about 4.6%. It doesn't seem like it's a lot, but still, one of the when I do comparison with us, United States, with other countries, we are not used to the inflation and other increases. Even in some cases, 4.6 may sound a lot for some people. And the job, which you as 2 terms as the governor, and now with the mayor, these are almost like the CEO type of jobs with a lot of social responsibilities you have. So budget is one of the most important part where you are able to get what you need and run the city in this case. Now, one of the other changes that we are expecting is with the ambulance system, the EMS. So the idea of folding that into the Wilmington Fire Department. So we want to kind of know more about it. Does that bring more increase to the budgets?
Yeah, and so in fact, the increase in the budget for the ambulance service. So 20 or more years ago, Wilmington Fire Department did provide ambulance services in the city. A little bit after that, and I don't remember exactly what year, they started contracting it out to a third party. And more recently, that third party was St. Francis. And they just haven't been able to deliver the service, mostly because they've had trouble attracting the workforce. And that's just not just a St. Francis problem, but that's a problem across the state with respect to ambulance drivers and so on. Because most of the ambulances in our state are provided by volunteer fire companies. Now, there aren't many volunteers out. In fact, there are no volunteers with respect to ambulance services. And so St. Francis ultimately said, look, we can't do this anymore. And so we're going to be taking it over. We had anticipating that, the previous mayor, Przicki, had anticipated that might happen. So they bought 5 ambulances a year or 2 ago. We have those in-house. But it's going to cost us more money to hire people and get staffed up and ready to go this year. And that 4% increase in the total budget is explained a lot by the increase in the ambulance service, adding it to the budget. 4% in some areas is a little bit on the moderate side to high side. But when you think about inflation generally, when you think about the business that you're in, healthcare inflation, it's like twice that, So, and we provide, basic services. We compete on law enforcement with our police officers and with our ambulance folks and with the firefighters, with other agencies, particularly state police, with respect to Wilmington Police, and they pay a lot more. So we've got to keep pay those salaries in line. So it's been a learning experience, notwithstanding my long service, particularly doing budgets. But our focus has been on police and fire and the ambulance service, and we've been able to keep the increase low enough so that we don't have a property tax increase, even though with the assessment, some homeowners are going to see that on their bill.
I see. Now, with the ambulance service, many people may not know, and as you know, I work very closely with Christiana Hospital and St. Francis. Up until 2016, we were actually providing surgical services. Prior to that, it was the hospitalists. I ran both hospitalist companies for Christiana and St. Francis and Bay Health. So in 2013, there was a new leadership at St. Francis. So one of the issues that they had, they're competing with Christiana Hospital Wilmington campus, and the issue was where the ambulance actually takes them.
Right. That was, I think, the reason they got in the ambulance business in the first place.
Right. So
they were losing business, if you will, to Christiana Care, Wilmington Hospital Christiana Care, because the ambulances were taking most of the patients to the emergency room.
And they have to take it to the closest place normally.
Right, and the patient can decide where he or she wants to go unless it violates some condition that they're experiencing. So, but it obviously didn't work out for them in that respect, and they ran into some issues. Mostly, initially, they, I think, overextended it in terms of the people that they hired. Then they had trouble keeping people. They kind of had to cut what they paid. And so it just didn't work out for them. And so we've got to provide that service, and we know that our fire department can do it. They've done it before. We do get what's called mutual aid. So if there's an ambulance there's not a ready ambulance because there are lots of people who have called in 911. They've activated all the ambulances. We did get support from the volunteer companies outside of the borders of the city, from Tallyville, from Inquidale, from different places, Bellefonte, different places outside the city.
Now, are you, or like maybe it's already in place, are we getting any support from these hospitals in terms of the work that now the city is going to do?
Well,
as you know, the Christiana Hospital makes a lot of money, although they're nonprofits.
Yeah, they've got a huge fund balance. We know that. But no, look, the hospitals, in Christiana Care in particular, which is the biggest hospital in the city, the fact that it is in the city is really important. You know, that we have a hospital close by for our neighbors to use when they need that. And those people who work in the Christiana Care do pay a city wage tax, which helps us with our budget. And so, you know, as a nonprofit, they don't pay property taxes, but we still get revenue from those employees, and that's really important to us. They also provide a service, kind of a social worker type service when there's a problem with where we've had a shooting, right? And so they have a team that contacts the family of the person who presents at the hospital with a gunshot and tries to mitigate, any other things that might occur as a result of that, some revenge type of thing, if it's a neighborhood group or gang issue. And so they've been a strong partner in that, and we appreciate it, and it's an important service.
Well, the hospitals are important, so I always say that. So when there's a need, you do need to have a good hospital.
Absolutely. And I remember back in the 70s, or when it maybe a little bit earlier than that, when the decision was being made about building the new hospital. That hospital down in Ogletown is relatively new.
Right.
Well, there were people concerned about when they opened that bigger hospital that they would close Wilmington Hospital. And of course, they made the commitment not to close Wilmington Hospital.
Right.
And in fact, they've expanded in certain areas, Wilmington Hospital, and that's really good for the city. And we're very appreciative of that.
Now, with the federal, at the federal level, there are a lot of changes happening. I'm not going to say positive, negative, but a lot of
That's
changes.
an interesting way of putting it, Kemal. Very, very politic of you.
Well, because there are some, the way that message is being delivered, probably they're failing, how it's being executed, but there may be some benefits on some, like different things. But
yeah, I mean, the fact is there are things that needed to be done. It's really a question of how they're doing it.
Right.
Kind
the
of
execution,
the slash and burn without working. By the way, President Obama did a lot of that. President Clinton before him did, trying to rationalize. We got a big federal bureaucracy and a huge annual budget deficit. And so addressing some of those inefficiencies, really important. Everybody was concerned about the lack of legal immigration as people came into the country. It's really a question of attitude, how it was done. It's just kind of a lack of compassion, I guess, for the needs of people generally. And that's unfortunate. And, we'll see what happens as it plays out.
So with that, there on the financial side, especially with the social issues, you may remember in one of our episodes in the past, I mentioned how good our Medicaid system is in the state of Delaware during your 8 years. Prior to that, it started, I believe it was, I can say in the last 3 terms, like 12 years, it's one of the best because we provide services for other states on the revenue cycle management. And I see how, like the PA in Pennsylvania, how the Medicaid is nothing close to what we have here. In different places, it's not same. Are these federal funding issues, the freezes and uncertainties, are we going to have impact on what you have with your budget?
Well, certainly at the state level. And we'll see a lot of that trickles through to the city level. But let's go back to ambulance services, right? One of the reasons we believe that we can provide ambulance services without an additional huge cost to the city is because the Medicaid rate for an ambulance run has been increased to the Medicare rate, which is much higher. And that's enabled St. Francis, frankly, to come closer to breaking even, and it will enable us to do that as well. We will engage a third-party entity to make those collections, and that should cover the costs of personnel and the ambulance run. So to your point, Medicaid reimbursement, Medicaid funding for all kinds of things, adults and children with disabilities, a really significantly important support for families and for those individuals. We have extended Medicaid coverage for a lot of those services, to your point, than states around us and states across the country. It's very expensive. It's an expense that hits the state budget, not so much the city budget, because about half or thereabouts of Medicaid expenses are covered by the state and half or so by the federal government.
So now I want to shift gears a little bit to the safety of the city or the individual being feeling safe.
Priority number one for everybody who lives in the city.
So now I'll give you a little bit background on how I process these things. So our office used to be in Bear, kind of like a suburb, right, for Newcastle. And the way that I look at these things, if you, this red car analogy, right? If you want to see something, if you think about it, you'll start seeing them. So working with different nonprofit organizations, I'm always more kind of alert to see if there's anyone that I can help. So in our old office, we used to have people on the bus stop that they would actually, homeless people, they would kind of make that place, the bus stop, their own. And I would tell our employees, our leadership team here, hey, when we decide to move here, we first move our medical office. We bought that, and it's kind of like I was kind of in love with that building.
It's a great building,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, like one may say it's nothing special, but if you are from Delaware, you live in Delaware, that's one of the nicest place. And in the middle of all these big high rises, so we are right in the middle. And then we decided to move our business office here. That was July. And of course, people were concerned, although we have the parking garage, like they don't have to walk. But some cases,
yeah, you're in a pretty good location with respect to what you're getting at. And
right. So I walk like to Starbucks in many days if the weather is nice. Or like sometimes I just take a walk around the block. So the homelessness is an issue, and I think we discussed this at your last episode with us. But now you are in charge, and one thing that I want to kind of know, and also someone who live in the city yourself, you probably would be able to give us a better approach on what we should be doing if I encounter the homeless person, knowing someone is homeless. One, even if they didn't approach us, like, is there something that we need to do? Two, what happens if they approach us? What should be our plan of action in those cases?
yeah, so most of the individuals who are unhoused here in our city are individuals with either mental health or substance use disorder, right? So they have these issues that could result in dangerous behavior. So I think number one is to be careful. Number two is you can help them better by making a donation to organizations and nonprofits like the Ministry of Caring, whose submission it is to care for these folks. And we as a city need to do a better job of protecting commercial areas like yours, neighborhoods. And it's different in some neighborhoods. They have a lot of vacant houses, and people that are unhoused use those vacant houses as shelter. So they're squatting in those homes, creating, unpleasant conditions for neighbors and the neighborhood in which they live. We just have to find a way. I'm convinced that we can do a better job finding a way to compassionately deal with this population, help this population, if you will, and at the same time respect the other activity going on in our city, business activity, commercial districts, residential areas, so that they don't become, a terrible thing in the city. Or just yesterday I was down, near the riverfront, near the Sunday Breakfast Mission, where there's a big kind of encampment. And the people that go in and out of work there in those businesses right along the river, they park across the way, so they get hassled as they go back to their cars. It's going to be bad for the city and the people who do business here. So we need to find a better way to accommodate their needs for shelter, for food, to spend their time during the day, to get, showers and to relieve themselves and that type of thing. And I'm convinced if we can organize the way we provide those services, we'll be able to kind of avoid some of these concentrations that really get disruptive for everybody else in the city or people that are working or living in that area.
So question, and, not to offend anyone, I'm just asking. So, there's one nice thing about being the person who's asking questions. I can always blame someone else for the questions. So do we need to call the city when we see the issue with, like you mentioned, the let's say someone...
I think if there's definitely illegal or antisocial, violent behavior that people are witnessing, sure, they should call 911 or call the city non-emergency
number. What about
number.
311?
Or you can call 311, yes.
So that's for the non-emergencies.
There is a non-emergency number. I should know it off the top of my head,
think
but
that,
I don't.
isn't that 311?
Well, that's the basic call for service, mostly other services. But yeah, 911 or 311.
Mm-hmm.
And we now have social workers essentially that work for the police department because these are kind of social welfare kinds of problems. And that some rise to the level of criminal behavior and activity, and we can't tolerate that, particularly if it's disturbing or harming other people in the city. And it's hard to figure out where that line is sometimes. We don't have all the tools that we need to move populations around, given some of the lawsuits that the city has seen. But we'll continue to work at it.
So
If we don't do a better job, it's going to hurt the commercial and residential areas of our city, and people will leave. People that can leave or move will.
Do we have enough shelters?
We don't have enough places for people to be sheltered each night. Now, what that number is, I don't know off the top of my head. We're forming, I've signed an executive order to empanel a task force to look at all these issues. And one of the things that we'll start off with, okay, what's the data? How many people we talking about? What's the number of emergency housing that we have? And by the way, we do not have many or any at all children like out there sleeping in the woods.
That's true.
That's a really...
These are all adopted.
Yeah, we're talking about adults, most, again, with mental health and substance use disorders. Not all.
Some of them are coming out of...
We're getting people that are anecdotally that are coming out of Philadelphia. The mayor up there has cleaned out the area in Kensington where there's been an open drug market, and we interview them and they tell us where they're coming from. And we actually have some who have said they've been told to come to Wilmington from Kent County and Dover in that area because we have better service. That's got to stop.
Right.
And people ought to, cities and towns, other parts of the state, other parts of the region need to take care of their own, so to speak, and we'll do our best to take care of our own.
Now, you mentioned the mental health issue, and I guess in healthcare, as we are one of the healthcare providers in the state of Delaware, mental health is probably one of the biggest issues. Not because how many people we have to deal with, but how many providers we have. So we have very limited number of providers. So and now, I see this as a big advantage when you have like 2 terms governor experience, and now you are in the city. Can we see a different approach in the city in terms of the healthcare for mental health side with your experience? Yeah,
well, first of all, I'm not an expert, and even with my experience...
Well, you are being humbled.
Yeah, but, this is a different kind of a issue and public health and individual health question. And I'm familiar with family issues with respect to alcohol and drug dependency, and I know how difficult that can be on everybody, on family members, on co-workers, on friends. It's just hard to get people to do the things that they need to do to get their addiction under control. But I believe that we can do better, and my basic approach is to follow the advice of the experts and to follow the science in all these matters, and to figure out ways. I guess I know in drug and alcohol addiction there are kind of stages as you move through, and you're getting control, and you can get setbacks and kind of all the rest of it. On the mental health side, I'm not as knowledgeable there. Some are persistent conditions that need to be controlled with medications and so on and so forth. But we just need to recognize that those services are needed if we're going to really address the problems of homelessness in the city. And it is different here in the city because the neighborhoods are tight, and people, if somebody's kind of sleeping in, and somebody's in a vacant house on your block or in your neighborhood, that's very different than sleeping in the woods where no local residents are nearby. Right. So we've got to deal with it, and we can. I know we can do better, but I also know that it's difficult.
So in United Medical ACO now, we have 2 social workers on site. They're actually here in this office. So with the healthcare, how we are delivering healthcare today, that changed. So it's not just like trying to schedule someone's colorectal screening, but it's understanding the social determinant of health,
Right.
like what they go through, what they have to live with, what other conditions they may have, who else they are taking care of. And then you realize that it's not going to be straightforward care coordinator calling for, hey, here's your next appointment. No, it's not like that. So I think there's the social workers, they do a really good job for us. And then it also made me better understand how we are approaching these people. Their, whole approach is so different than what we knew before.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a mindset that's hard that you don't try to apply your own mindset. It's
It
not
doesn't
going to
work,
take you there,
right.
right? And so I think that's why I'm really interested in getting the task force moving, because these are people, many of them, who work with this population, who kind of understand better the individual challenges that they face, who understand a little better their mindset and how they approach the world. And I think that'll help us. I'm convinced that if we can provide services compassionately in different areas of the city, or in areas kind of that are protecting, commercial corridors, residential areas, then we're going to be better able to strike a balance in across the city between people who are unhoused and folks that are kind of
Exactly.
living their lives and going about their business.
Now, I guess the next topic in terms of education and youth engagement probably is another issue. And so I said this to a couple other politicians. Sarah was one of them. I see your social media posts. So I guess not necessarily jealous, but I envy some of them where you are able to do a lot of things on the weekends in the actual community itself. I see you actively doing things.
I spent a lot of time picking up litter in
I know, I was going to say that, but I was just thinking,
places.
should I say it or not? Like, how do you do that? What makes you do that? So then I can become a better person. Like,
Yeah, well, I would encourage everybody. I take pride in my city, and I know most of the people, if not all the people in our city, do as well. And so, if you take pride, you want a city to be proud of, then you first of all you won't litter and throw trash out the window in the
Right.
first place, and secondly, you'll help clean up when we have our regular cleanups, and we have several as spring comes along. We'll have neighborhood cleanups, and we encourage people to sign up and join us. And it just makes you feel better that you're doing something to beautify the committee and community, and to make the neighborhoods we live in more attractive.
So I mean, again, like those are really nice to see. And I know you're not doing it for the show, because it's been for so many years you are in the public eyes, and I see you doing it almost every Saturday, Sunday. You are in some social activity with the people of Delaware. Now, a lot of people maybe in the city. So that's a really great
Well, being
example.
mayor of the city, at least my geographic area is
Smaller,
smaller
so
than
it's
it
more
used
control,
to be.
right? So, but it's more challenging because you have to deal with the inner city population, which makes this probably even more. I mean, maybe you can tell me this, but I see this being very challenging because your population that you deal with is
Well, when
a
you
lot
have,
more
particularly
challenging
when
than
you
the
have a lot of
state.
unhoused folks,
Right.
I mean, they leave a lot behind when they're, some vacant lots that they're
Right.
spending time in, different places they're going to parks. Rodney Square, for instance, I go to church just a block down at St. Joseph's on French Street. And after church on Sunday, I go around Rodney Square and I can see all this trash that's left. Now, our people, both in downtown Visions, they do a really nice job of cleaning up. The Parks Department, Rodney Square is part of their responsibility. But it'd be a lot easier if people didn't just throw their trash down outside of the bus shelters and, in the areas around Rodney Square. And that's not a lot to ask, and the people that somehow criticize me for bringing that that to people's attention, I think they're not approaching it with respect on both sides of the question.
Well, I mean, everyone has to do what they're expecting from others. They have to start doing it first. So we can't expect everything from the government. So as an individual, we have to be, taking those initiatives on our own. And that's why I think you being an example for some of these, even like someone like for me, like as you know, I'm involved with so many different nonprofits, but you do hands-on. That makes a huge difference.
We had a bunch of school students, middle school students, about a week or two ago, and there's a wetlands area just outside between South Walnut Street and South Bridge, and there's a little trail that runs along the creek there, and it was great to see the kids going back, just jumping into the weeds and everything and pulling out all the trash. We had shopping carts that we pulled out and all kinds of stuff and piled it up for the sanitation people to pick up at the end. And, it's just nice to have the young people out there cleaning up and making our city a better place to live in.
So in terms of education, are we expecting any new initiatives?
Yeah, I'm going to try to push really hard on finally getting the city redistricted. Everybody's kind of agreed that the Christina School District shouldn't be part of the city anymore, and so that leaves really, as a practical matter, Red Clay on the west side and Brandywine on the north side. We need to get that done. We need to focus more on our younger children, getting a good start in early childhood education, as well as, reading proficiency by third grade, which has been a priority of mine, and funding those.
Can you elaborate that? Like, I was trying to kind of prep for this, and this issue of third graders reading on grade level. So that means they're not right now, particularly in our city schools, the best schools on the north side, Harlan. Their proficiency rate at third grade is maybe 25 to 30%, and that's on the high side probably. But in some areas of the city, less than 10% of the children. That doesn't mean they can't read the words, they sound them out, but there's two parts to it. There's that, and then there's assigning and understanding what the words mean when you put them together. And I think that's where they're falling short. So we need to provide for them extra time. So after school, weekends, and summertime. And I think the city, through the Parks Department, can do that. I've asked Kevin Kelly, former city councilman and former director of public parks in the city, as well as a state budget official in the Department of Health and Social Services, and Jim Simmons, who's a former principal at Mount Pleasant, to come up with ideas that really engage our students, particularly the younger ones, in such a way that we can enhance what happens during the school. We built a brand new school, Pritchett Academy on the east side, $100 million school. We need to make sure that the children now in that school are getting the support they need so that they can read proficiently at third grade. If you can't read by third grade, it's going to be hard to learn. I mean, if you can't read and understand, it's going to be hard after that to learn in order to be successful. So no, that's actually, that's where it starts. So if we don't do it early on, so the problem becomes bigger and bigger. So then it's
then they fall behind,
Right.
and then they find other ways to get attention, and they're not always positive, and it's just not a good thing. I mean, if you go and you look at our detention centers and our correctional facilities, you'll find that a lot of high school dropouts, people are the reading levels of like a middle school student, and that's leads to really bad things.
And I think some part of it may have something to do with the family structures as well. Like, I learned how to read and write at age 3, so I was
There's
so
no
close to my
question.
mom. I mean, my older sister, when she was studying, so I copied whatever she was doing. She didn't know that I was actually learning at the same time, but then all of a sudden, by age 3.5, I knew how to read and
And
write.
that's why we have to fill in that time after the school day's over, on weekends, during the summertime. Not nearly enough children attend summer school to get some extra time on the reading or math or whatever it is, than should be. And we have resources to do that, and we should make sure that more of our children, particularly those that are not quite making it, can catch up.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the work that government, every level, what we do, what you guys are able to do, it does help, because the society as one whole, like just because I'm in a better position doesn't mean that I'm going to be living in a better position, because this is one whole again. So my house is 2 miles from here. This is my office. This is my medical practice. So I need to be able to walk, right? But I have, as an individual, I have a responsibility not to expect everything from the city. So that's why we want to make sure that we are out there helping whatever we can from our point, and bringing business into the city.
What you're doing is incredibly important, and not enough people recognize that the people who might not live in the city, live outside the city, come into the city to work, are very important to the vitality of our city because of the wage tax, because of the money that you bring in, for shopping during the day and after work. Without that, our city will die, and or certainly won't be as vital and vibrant as we need it to be.
Right. And just on a good note, last night I was leaving here, and one of my managers, he was leaving at the same time. So downstairs, he was not going to the parking garage. So I'm like, "You don't have your car today?" He's like, No, I just walk from my house. So it's about a mile from here, and I was pleasantly surprised with that. So then this was 7 p.m. He feels safe, and I wasn't worried about it. Like, the situation is not as bad. We just want the city to be, probably the best. But right now, we are we handle a lot of issues that we had in the past. We are in a better position. So it made me so happy that he felt safe enough to walk.
Yeah, I would say two things. One, we're safer than we have been in the last several years. And we're making progress like we haven't,
Right.
In recent times. And that's, you got to be moving forward. You got to be making progress. You got to be getting safer. And that's what my goal is as mayor.
So now, I personally have a connection to the state that we live in, to Delaware. I wasn't born here. It was 1998, December 1998. I came here. I never left. So I consider myself, I said this so many times, like a hardcore Delawarean. So, and now being in this city, and we have offices, as you know, in different places. Our other business office now becoming a surgery center. So we didn't leave those places, but having the responsibility, going through the experience in the city is different in a good way. So I want this to be like, and I think I'm really hopeful that in your leadership, we can probably accomplish a lot in the next 8 years at a minimum, if that's 2 terms that you are going to do. So we are going to insist on that. So because what Wilmington used to be, from the just like how we were being the industrial business, everything used to be on chemicals and others. Now we are transitioning into service level businesses, banks and others, healthcare. That actually it has a lot of potentials, and I want that to stay permanently. And we want to be part of the future of city of Wilmington, and also do the best for Delaware. Now, I know we are taking a lot of time from you, and I know you are very busy. So, what would be your final message for us for today?
Well, I think just to reflect on what you just said, there's really not much more important than businesses locating and being successful to operate here in our city. Because without that, we're dead. Without that, we don't have resources for police and fire, public safety services that are so important. We don't have that for our water and sewer infrastructure, all the things that are necessary to run a city for the people who actually live here as well. And so it's really a combination of the residential the residents here in the city, as well as our commercial folks that come in, business folks that come in every day. And so it's, for me, for mayor, the job is to cultivate both, to cultivate an environment where businesses can be successful and cultivate an environment where our residential areas, every resident, every neighborhood across our city is strong and vibrant and safe.
Well, I know today wasn't in person, so you took probably more time from your schedule. I really do appreciate this. Many people are following us. When you first joined us, I think we were less than 10,000 subscribers. Today we are over 120,000.
Wow.
And it's growing, and that's why we invested into this, because if you remember why we did this it was all about the COVID-19. So what keeps me going is positive things. I have to be optimistic in order for me to produce better. So I always see some silver lining in issues, and I think COVID-19 was a really bad time for everyone, but I think it also taught us a lot of things, like being able to take advantage of the digital media, digital health, telemedicine became so big.
Expanded.
And we kept doing this. And, one of our surgeons, Dr. Kemal Erkan, he and I, we still do our bariatric Friday, every Friday at 3 p.m. So, and now we want to do better. And you being here in person made it already better. And I thank you again. And your insight on these issues and what the challenge that you have that you are going to go through. I want you to know that we are here to help.
Great.
So, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been great. Always a pleasure. Don't hesitate to ask me to come back on. And by the way, if there's anything we can do for you to keep you here in the city, let us know.
Our goal is to stay here. So
perfect.
Thank you. There, so you can let me know when it's time.